Hello to all our wonderful listeners. Thank you once again for joining us and tuning in to our Crossroads International Volunteer Podcast in Ghana. I'm Stephanie Agyapong, the Volunteer Support Advisor at the country office, and I'll be your host for today. So today's episode starts our partner feature segment where we introduce you to one of the many partners we have in Ghana. You've met some of our volunteers and a majority of them work with partner organizations. So we will occasionally feature them for you to meet them and get to know the work they are doing. For our first-time listeners, Crossroads International is a leading Canadian volunteer corporation agency that works to advance equality for women and girls and eradicating poverty in some of the world's poorest countries in Africa. Ghana happens to be one of those countries, so we have Canadian volunteers who work tirelessly with these NGOs and some government entities to ensure that we achieve that goal. We have about 10 to 11 partners, and as you continue listening to our podcast, you'll get to meet a majority of them. So with that said, we have iSpace Foundation with us today because on the UN calendar, January 24th is International Day of Education, and it's a day that is supposed to celebrate the role of education for peace and development. Education does not necessarily have to be formal education that takes place in a classroom. It can also be very informal, and iSpace has some great educational programs running at their center currently. So programs such as their 9-month software skills development and internship program, you can find all of these on their website at ispacefoundation.com. They also have UWAT, and that is to equip women with coding, business management, professional networking, and pitching skills, as well as funding to kickstart their businesses. They've got Phoenix Kids, and that provides early access to computer science technology, particularly to young girls and underrepresented communities. Then Eden Labs, which will be the topic of our conversation today. Eden Labs is a tech maker space where young and talented individuals are encouraged to explore, create, and innovate. And they're here to share those with us. Thank you for agreeing to be featured for this occasion.
Thank you. My name is Godwin Mensah, an IT professional with nearly a decade of experience in the tech industry. My journey has ranged from being IT support to my current role as a systems administrator. Along the way, I have taken on various roles, including managing products, teaching kids STEM, which has been very fulfilling. I have been with iSpace for a little over 8 years, contributing to its growth.
That's great, Godwin. Thank you for sharing. So can you tell us a little bit more about Eden Labs?
Eden Labs was formed in the year 2017 out of a program that iSpace was running called UWAT, which trains women in tech and in business. Usually when these women are coming for the program, they come with their kids, or sometimes have to leave their kids with either caretakers or family members. So iSpace decided to create a space where these kids can be taught tech skills. So basically that is how Eden Labs began.
Okay. Do you think coding is considered a critical skill for young people today, and why?
Yes, a very essential skill for kids and almost for everyone in today's world. For kids, I would say it fosters problem solving and critical thinking, which is a very essential skill in navigating challenges in the modern world. Problem solving actually helps kids to break down complex problems into smaller models for them to be able to tackle them one after the other, which makes their work easier. Critical thinking, because it helps them to analyze situations, scenarios, identify patterns, and make meaningful decisions out of them. So I would say it's a very crucial skill for kids to have.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful how you laid it out because these are such important skills for anybody to have. And it's great that young kids can start nurturing them at such an early age. And yes, they get them from the classroom, but then they can build upon it if they visit centers like iSpace to join some of these programs and then continue growing.
How do you think parents and teachers can introduce coding in a more engaging way?
Thank you for the question. I'll start by saying parents and teachers play a very major role when it comes to the development of kids, and more so when it comes to coding as well. For parents, I would say they are the first point of contact to these kids. And as parents, you need to embrace the curiosity of these kids, especially when you see them having interest in the tech area, or basically almost every area, but especially when it comes to the tech area. And what you do is that you first of all have to embrace that curiosity, encourage them, provide them the resources that they need to be able to experiment whatever they want to do. And when it comes to teachers, I would say they need to make the coding more practical, more interesting, more engaging by making sure that they make the class interactive, make it relevant, teach them towards their line of interest. First of all, you need to know the age range, then know the things that interest them, and then you focus the learning process towards the interest area. And that makes it more interactive, more engaging, and more practical.
And so, with your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges kids face when learning to code, and how do you think we can overcome them?
I have seen a lot of things that draw kids back when it comes to coding. But then the first on my list is divided attention and impatience. Generally, kids are like that. So what you do as a teacher or a parent is to dedicate a time frame when it's time for them to learn coding, so that their attention is not taken away from what they are doing. That is one of the ways that you can prevent the divided attention. Another thing I have noticed is the complexity of the coding, because to most kids it's something new. It becomes overwhelming to them when you are introducing them to the whole environment of coding. So over the years, what I do is to try and make sure that I turn the learning towards their interest area. That way they don't see it as overwhelming, they don't get frustrated, and also take it slowly. You don't push everything at a go. Also, one other thing that I have noticed is that because kids learning coding doesn't come with an immediate reward, like the way you play video games and you get an immediate reward, or you go to social media, you see what you are doing. Learning how to code is not like that. So what I do is to try to make it more fun, make it more interactive, so that they can enjoy it.
I think one thing that I'd really like to commend you and your team on is the fact that I believe you really get to know the children that you're working with, because everything that you stated is so true. When you're working with people, you have to know them. You have to know when they're tired. You have to know when they need a break. You have to know what they like. A lot of the times we go into things because of expectations, not because we enjoy it. So once you get to know that a child is interested in this area in tech or in coding, then you foster that. You go to where they are, you meet them where they're at. So for all the parents listening, or aunties or guardians, I think iSpace really does well in getting to know their clientele, their beneficiaries, their participants, whoever goes into their center, they get to know you, and then they do programming around what your needs are. And that's the sense that I'm getting. And I think being partners with them, we've seen that in the work that they do as well.
Can you share a personal story or example of a young coder who made an impact?
Yes, there's this young girl that I taught by name Cassie. She was around the age of 10 to 11 when I was teaching her how to code. Along the line, she was able to think beyond just, you learning how to code. But then she began scouting around for problems that she thinks she can solve. And she came up with a very amazing solution to a problem to young girls at her age. And she didn't only end it there, but she took it to an international competition. Even though she didn't get to win the overall award, but she was among the top finalists. And out of the program, I believe, has shaped her so much that now she's doing a course in engineering the last time I checked. So I have seen how the coding have actually shaped and formed her way of thinking, and it's just amazing.
So what are some of the free or low cost resources beginners can benefit from?
Tons of resources out there for beginners, but I'll just touch on a few. For kids under 12, I'll recommend a program like Scratch, which is a programming language developed by MIT, which helps kids to write code, to develop their own game, develop their own arts, music. Another one is code.org. It's a platform for kids to learn software engineering, so all from front end to back end. And then we have Thinker, which also help them to learn engineering in general, like 3D designing, IoT. For people above 12, I recommend platforms like W3 Schools, Khan Academy, and Learn.How. These are just few ones that I can recall.
How does learning to code prepare kids for non-tech careers?
Kids learning how to code do more than just playing a role in the tech ecosystem. And one of the non-tech skills I would say is problem solving. Generally, we are faced with problems irrespective of whichever environment you find yourself or sector that you find yourself. And they knowing problem solving or having problem solving skills help them to break these problems into smaller models for them to be able to find solutions to them. Another non-tech skills is helping them to understand how systems work. We are surrounded by systems, whether you like it or not. And for anyone to be able to do well, you need to understand the system. The last thing I'll touch on is creativity and innovation. It helps them to do more think beyond their immediate environment, find new solutions to new problems. Yes, so I would say these are a few skills that I think cut across in whichever sector that you find yourself.
What role do you think communities and mentorship play in teaching coding?
Communities and mentors play a major role in development of kids in general, and more so when it comes to coding. When a kid finds themselves in a community where coding is encouraged, it helps them to learn from each other, find solutions to problems that they don't have solutions for. It helps them build resilience, especially when the other kid is doing more than a particular kid think he or she is doing, and that kind of encourage that kid to be able to also do more. So it becomes more like a competition among them, as in who can do better, and which is a healthy competition because it helps them to learn faster and tackle more complex challenges. For mentors, I would say their role starts from beginning to the end, throughout the process, by guiding these kids throughout the journey, helping them to navigate the whole process, helping them to avoid certain mistakes that are avoidable, and by so doing they get to learn faster and do better.
Let's talk about girls and underrepresented groups. How do you think we can inspire them to pursue coding?
Girls and people underrepresented area can be encouraged to pursue coding by providing them the right environment that makes them feel inclusive, help them to make them believe that they can be whatever they want to be. Another thing that we can look at is providing them with the resources that they need. It could be a laptop, it could be internet, it could be anything that is needed for them to be able to learn. Also encourage them as a society, because naturally society have made it look like girls are not supposed to be at places that has to do with tech. So if generally society make it easy for them to find themselves among these male-dominated area, that will also be a good thing. Also, making the program more tailored to their interest area. That way they feel comfortable and then they learn faster.
You see, when we talk about engaging girls, including women, and making sure that we're empowering women, we can talk a lot, but iSpace, you're actually doing the work. When we started the podcast, I mentioned some of the programs that you currently have at your center, and you have the UWATS, which equips women with coding, business management, and to some extent, even getting them funding. And then with your Phoenix Kids program, you provide early access to computer science, and you really try to reach girls who are in underrepresented communities. So you're doing the work that you're talking about, and that's what I love to see. Sometimes we can talk, but then there's not much action. So kudos to you, the team, for including young girls and women in the work that you're doing.
What is your advice for someone who feels intimidated by coding?
I would say do not be intimidated by the codes that you see, but rather be encouraged through the possibilities of what that code can do. For instance, if you know that through that code you can develop a program that can solve a particular problem in your area, that alone is an encouragement enough for you to not feel intimidated by the code. Also, I would say do not rush in your process of learning, but rather take it one step at a time. make sure you create an interest, even if you feel like it's not going the way you want it to be. Find something that will encourage you to be able to learn.
Where do you see the future of coding education heading?
I would say recently there has been a shift in our education system. We have seen a lot of the schools in the urban areas now including coding in their curriculum or doing it as an extra curriculum activity. And in the future, I see coding fully be integrated into our school system. Also, I see a lot of inventions or programs that are going to be created in the EdTech environment to help kids learn better, have a better interaction when it comes to coding or STEM in general. The last thing I will talk about is I see an increase in creativity and innovation because we have a lot of kids who have much knowledge when it comes to coding or STEM than we do now. And it means that they will be able to solve more problems in the future than we are doing now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Godwin.
Yes, thank you, Godwin. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for honoring the invitation. Thank you for sharing the great work that you're doing. Now, to our wonderful listeners, if you have any questions or you want to continue following up on the great work that iSpace Foundation is doing, you can go on their website, ispacefoundation.com, follow them on their social media handles. I'm sure you can find them on the website. And yeah, so that brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thank you for tuning in.